But I think that if you look at it a little bit more objectively, Ashes of Creation objectively right now has a lot of hype behind it, and it's authentic hype. It's not based off what was said, it's based off what is seen.
It's not based off what is said, it's based off what is seen. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the crux of the reason behind why so many content creators are not hyped for Pantheon Rise of the Fallen the same way they are for Ashes of Creation. Now, is that good or bad? That depends on your point of view and whether or not you buy into a vision versus buying into an actual proof of progress and steady progress reports that are front facing, public facing, as opposed to locked behind one of the strictest NDAs I've ever seen in the industry and a bunch of walls and fortifications of never letting anybody see anything out in the public. I'm Tam Anderson, aka Renfil, the bearded dwarven princess, as I am known to some, and we are back for another discussion in the latest MMORPG analysis video where we are talking about the difference between Ashes of Creation and Pantheon Rise of the Fallen in terms of what they are showing to the public and how that has affected the public perception, as well as what other independent development teams probably need to look towards. I could talk a little bit about my experience developing the Saga of Leucemia, which has now rebranded itself to Embers Adrift and beyond. One of the challenges facing Pantheon is the fact that they haven't released any sort of realistic footage to the public ever. What we get in most of the updates, including the most recent update from, I think it was just last week even, we get wireframes, gray boxes, and um, concept art, right? And for most people, like Asmongold, Josh Strife Hayes, content creators, people who create content for the internet, that is not enough for them to be interested in the title. In comparison, Ashes of Creation does these huge video updates where they show all sorts of amazing stuff on screen. They show the combat working. They show hundreds of players on screen at the same time. They show amazing visual effects. They show creatures. They show NPCs. They show towns. They show the world. They show all of these things. And even though it's in an alpha state, it looks very good and it's very polished. And there is there is absolutely something to be said for those who make the commentary of, well, you can't judge a book by its cover, and flashy footage doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a good product. That is a absolutely a valid criticism, a valid point to make. However, I think one of the reasons so many people have been starting to look at this and say, like Asmongold coming out recently and saying Pantheon's the worst MMO he's ever seen. And Josh Rife Hayes making the comment of, I just don't care about in development MMORPGs. These are big content creators, and some people might argue that, oh, Asmongold, I've seen some really nasty comments about Asmongold. I don't know of anyone that really dislikes Josh Rife Hayes, and the fact that he has come out and said something to the effect that I just don't pay attention to games like Pantheon or etc. because it's just not worth my time to cover an in development MMORPG because it's all smoke and mirrors and it could go up tomorrow, and until it actually reaches the finish line, I'm not going to pay attention to it. I'm in the same boat. Despite the fact that I spent 7 years as the creative director on an MMORPG and was very much in the documentation process. Regardless of where those videos are today, whatever the Embers Adrift team has done with those videos, I produced over 600 development videos over the course of 7 years on YouTube. And those videos documented the process. And they were never meant to be used as primarily a marketing tool, but they were definitely used as a documentation process of showing this is how we went from here to here. This is what happened along the way and everything else. But the subsequent component of that is yes, they are being used as marketing materials. But the current generation of players doesn't want to see crappy animations and bad VFX and the pre-alpha product. They want to see Ashes of Creation style product. They want to see something. They don't buy into a vision. It is a very small percentage of players who are actually going to buy into the vision component of your game. Most people want something they can see and touch so that they can visually correspond with that product and say, that looks good. I want to, the mechanics look good. The gameplay looks good. The animations look good. The VFX look good. If it looks good, then chances are it's also going to play good. And some people will say, yeah, but flashy visuals don't necessarily mean it's a good product. Again, not an incorrect assessment, but also not entirely truthful, because if something is inherently good, good mechanics, good, animations, everything, it's also going to look good. And when you're constantly only ever showing gray boxes and wireframes and concept art after 10 plus years of development, it's kind of your own fault when content creators start to complain about how they're not hyped for your product and there's nothing there to look forward to. And if the only defense is the VIP community who are seeing things behind closed doors that isn't being shown to the public, if the only defense for an in development title is the VIP community saying, "Oh, but trust them, trust them. They've got really cool things coming down the pipeline. We've seen it. We just can't talk about it. We just can't show it." If that's your only defense, I'm sorry, I don't buy into that, because that is largely a faith-based enterprise at that point. You have a community who have spent enough money to get behind the paywall that they are invested enough in that project that they have faith. They also have confirmation bias by all the other people who have bought into that product and who are there with them, also going, wow, this does look good. This is amazing. Oh, but we can't talk about it. We can't share it. And the company's not sharing anything out in the public. That is why we have the criticisms that we have from content creators like Josh Strife Hayes and Asmongold and beyond about how they're just not that hyped for Pantheon Rise of the Fallen in comparison to Ashes of Creation, because they're not being shown enough from the Pantheon team. Having done this myself, if I could go back and change the way I did things with the Saga of Leucemia, I would absolutely do it a different way. I would not do it the way I did it before, which is the documentation in a visible place. I did that because we came into that project being nobodies, developing something and figuring out as we went along, and I was very proud of that. I'm still very proud of that. However, I also recognize 7 years later, 8 years later, that that was not necessarily the best thing to do, the best way to go about it. And if I had to do it now, I would definitely develop it in private with a handful of people and get it to the point where I felt like it was worth sharing. Then I would start sharing, and that might be 7 8 year process. It might be something where we just don't share anything until it's ready. And I think that's something that Ashes of Creation sort of did, in the sense that they built their prototype, went to Kickstarter, and by the time they get to Kickstarter, they already had a fairly polished looking thing. And then they've just made it better and better and better looking over time and continuing to add it and enhance it. Um, Notwithstanding the budget things, I think one of the big things that Ashes of Creation has going for it, and this is discussed in the video up above, which I'm linking here in the description text. Ashes of Creation is mostly privately funded by Steven. Um, it's um, it's not something where they're relying on the funding of the community or investors. It is something where they went to Kickstarter, got some money there, that provided proof, and they got other people invested, and then from here on out, everything they've needed since then has been privately funded by the creative director and founder of the studio, because he's independently wealthy, and that gives them it gives them a sense of fuck you money, which is that's a very comfortable place to be in, where you have enough money that you can literally just brush off everything else, but also continually produce something that is visually of a high fidelity enough that it gets people genuinely hyped and interested. Now, I can't get interested in Ashes of Creation, not because it doesn't look good, but because I don't like PvP. So the PvP component is what's making me not really care about the game. But I can say, from a development standpoint, I have far more faith, and this is important, I have far more faith that Ashes of Creation is going to reach a finish line in a reasonable amount of time than I do for Pantheon, because Pantheon is still in a pre-alpha state after 10 years. And everybody wants to say, oh, give them time. It's a different type of development. They're part-timers. Not really, according to um, the recent investor talk that we got when uh, I forget the name, Chris Rowan, I think, the CEO came out and said, "Oh yeah, we have 35 people. We have like 25 full-timers and 10 part-timers." Like, if you have 25 full-time staff members, then why are we only seeing concept art and wireframes? Makes no sense to me. Food for thought. I loved this video. This is a long watch through. If you want to take the whole time to watch it, it's down below. If you got to the end here and you like what you saw, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, support like all of these amazing people on videos like this with a super thanks on live streams and beyond. You can do super chats and stickers, and you can also join as a member of the Adventurers Guild down there. Lots of cool perks for members. Tune into a live stream. Check out our Patreon page for our own video game and fantasy series that I'm building with my wife and my brother, and I'll see everybody in the next episode. Peace!